Mm, Didn't get that. Okay. All right. So I guess people are going to be coming in and out, but it's great to be with everybody. Just hey. So okay. So anyway, so we're in this week's parsha, and so this is the thing. The challenge that we have in this whole process is understanding a very, very crucial idea, right? And the crucial idea is, how do we understand the challenges that people go through, right? Righteous people, right? If a person's wicked, it makes sense, right? But why does Hashem, why does he put us in a position where it's difficulty, right? Like it should only be, hold on, hold on, let me get this back. Hold on 1 second. Hold on, let me get this back. Okay, so we want to understand this idea of like why people suffer and like in what's going on, right? Because that's like one of the big ideas of everything that we're going to read. So there's a few big ideas we're going to read, but one of the first ideas I want to go into is this idea of why does Hashem put us through difficulty, right? Because we need to understand that idea because we have this huge story. We just got of Chaya Sarah, right? The life of Sarah, she dies, right? And the Torah tells us that she dies and is connected to the fact that her son was she thought her son was going to die, right, through a sacrifice from her husband, right? And not only that, before that, it was so difficult for her to get pregnant, right? And so she went through this whole process of suffering, and then now Rebecca comes into the story. Yeah, hold on. Rebecca comes into the story, and hold on. Let me do this 1 second. All right, perfect. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. Okay. So we want to understand this idea. Why do people suffer? Right? Why do good people suffer? Why does Hashem put us through difficulty? What's the idea? Right? And so what I want to do is I want to expand our imagination. Right? I want to expand our imagination. I want us to see the world in a bigger way. And I want to be able to focus in on a few specific ideas, right? And these few specific ideas are going to really expand us in this whole thing. So we're going to start off. This is the safer that this is a safer that I'm really, really, really. I love this safer a lot. Right now, it's called Kav Hayashar, right? Basically, the straight way, right? And whatever, it's a Muser safer, whatever. But we're going to get into some really, really deep ideas, right? Okay, so it starts off with the famous verse in Vayikra, "Ve'ahavte le'erecha kamocha," right? So you shall love your fellow as yourself, right? That's how you could just say it, right? And so off of this point, they're going to start like this. Okay, the sages have. So what is this idea to love your neighbor as yourself, right? Because we're going to build in this idea to understand why we go through difficulties, and then as soon as we get to that understanding, we're going to jump right into this week's parsha, and it's going to all connect together, and it's going to be amazing. Okay, so it says like this. So the sages remark that this verse is fundamental principle in Torah, right? So this is a very fundamental, important thing that you shall love your fellow as yourself. And it says that there's no greater display of loving someone than rebuking one's brother or sister if they see him or her doing something wrong, right? So if you see someone that you know doing something wrong and you know it's going to hurt them in this whole dynamic, you got to speak up. You got to say something. And it says, for the soul of all of Israel is intimately connected to one another, right? So it's saying that like every soul, like when we look at the world, right? When we look around us, we see the world, we see different people, we see trees, we see the stars, we see everything, right? But the Torah is saying that everything is connected. And the core of that connection is all human beings, right? And specifically all the souls of Israel, right? So whether you're in Nigeria, whether you're in Iraq, whether you're in Moscow, whether the United States, we're all connected at the soul level. There's a unique soul that all Jews have, right? And the problem is we've been in diaspora for 2,000 years, so we're not able to necessarily see the souls of each other, right? We're not able to see the souls. All we see is the external of each other, how this person looks, their skin complexion, how tall they are, this, all these things. And then even more like how, what school they went to, how their neighborhood, what type of clothes they wear. But the inner aspect of every Jew is totally connected. So when we rebuke each other, when we help each other, it's for the good, right? So it says like this. So it says, but he says, but there's a guideline for this rebuke, for helping your friend, right? And he says that one has to understand the tribulations and the effects and the punishment that the soul of a person is subjected to after the body leaves this world. We must inform him, for perhaps through his companion will also have the merit to abandon this evil path. So they're saying like this. So you have a friend, and you have a friend that's not living by the Torah, right? You have a friend, they're not living by the Torah. And so the Torah says that you're responsible to rebuke that person. You got to tell them the truth. You say, you can't do that. That's a wrong thing. You can't live this way. And he says, and the thing about it, not only will you hope that this person would change, but even the person who's giving the rebuke, like the person, like say, if it's me and I have a friend, say my friend is named Adam, right? And Adam's doing these bad things. I'm like, Adam, you can't do that. You can't hang out with those people. You can't go to those places. You can't do this thing. So he's saying, even by helping him out, that's a way of showing the ultimate form of love. But he says also with that, that what that person is doing can reflect my behavior too, right? So we got to take into account that everything that we see in reality, there's a connection to us. If we see someone doing something against God or being disrespectful or hurting themselves, we can't just say, hey, look at that person over there. We got to say, you know what? That person is doing something wrong, but also it also affects me too as a person, right? It also affects me too as a person because it must be that God is showing me this because it's something to do with me, right? It's something to do with me, right? So this is what he's saying. And so he's saying when you do that, you fulfill the verse that says in Yeshayahu that says he will return and heal me. So it says Vihine po belfarech ze avechu avetova vechasar v'bitara, and it says be'ones hashana ha'asher adama pogema ba. He says, Be'olam Hazek. And so he says, in this chapter, we're not going to read the whole chapter, we're going to read a few parts. In this chapter, I will describe briefly the punishment that is suffered in the next world by a soul that has been totally engaged in this world. So this is what he's going to explain. The author is going to explain. And I don't know if I mentioned the author before, but it's Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch. And he's a huge person that lived in the 1700s, and it was so much sadness because there was huge massacres that happened to the Jewish people throughout Europe. And so this is one of the books that was written as a way to heal people, as a way to give them to think bigger after experiencing so much disaster. So here's the story, right? It's a famous story. It's a story by Rabbi Isaac Luria, right? And Rabbi Isaac Luria says like this. He says that Rabbi Isaac Luria is a famous Kabbalist, right? Everyone's heard about the Arizal, the Ari, this. He lived in Spot 500 years ago, and I visited his gravesite many times, but he brought down so much Kabbalah, right? He explained the Zohar in a way we didn't understand, all the deep secrets of the universe. He explained all this, but he was a very elevated person. He was one of the most elevated people that we've ever had that wasn't necessarily a prophet, right? He was just a very elevated soul. And so the Arizal's students tell a story in the name of his teacher. And he says they relate that there was a time that the Ari went out in the field to study. And when he went out to the field, he looked around. So, I know in Nigeria, there's like, you guys have fields, you guys have open grass areas, you have woods, this whole thing. So imagine going out to a place and you say, hey, I want to get away from everything, but I want to study, right? So what does he do? So he goes out and he goes out in the woods. And when he looks up, he sees endless amounts of souls, like human souls. Like I have a soul in my body, but these souls didn't have a body, right? And it was literally, it was infinite amount of souls. Like he looked at every tree, and there was literally tens of thousands of souls. And he looked over at the waters, he looked at the grass, he looked at everything. And the more and more he looked, the more and more souls kept coming, kept coming, kept coming, kept coming. And he was just surrounded by souls, right? And so what happened? So he asked the souls. He says, what are you guys doing here? Like, what is this about? And he says that we were not able to get into the heavens, right? All these souls were not able to get into the heavens. Why? He said, because they failed to repent their iniquities. And not only did they not repent, they prevented their friends from repenting as well. And so therefore they were condemned by God to wander the earth in the air of the firmament, right? And this one here, this one there. But now they heard in a heavenly voice. So he's saying, like, now, he said, we've been wandering around the world for literally hundreds of years, some people thousands of years. These souls were wandering around. But they heard a heavenly voice, and this heavenly voice is called a bas kol. It says, the bas kol says like this. It says that there is going to be a righteous person at this location, and this righteous person, you can go and you can ascend to the heavens that you can't get in through his prayers, right? And so he says the Arizal himself, he says this righteous soul has the ability to resurrect these souls. He has the ability for these souls. So how does it work, right? How does he work? So basically, the way that it works is like this. There's two types of people that have very elevated prayers. People who are righteous, totally righteous, Siddiqim, and then also people who are poor, right? Only like people who are poor. Now, what does it mean poor? Does it mean just people who have no money? No, it means people who are lacking, right? So the people who are lacking suffer, right? They suffer. The people who are lacking are in a place of suffering. So when they cry out to God, those words, those vibrations that come from their mouth, when they pray to God, they ask God for help. God, those prayers are so dear to God that literally God puts a protection shield around the prayers, right? Meaning that when you're speaking, it's not, you may not be able to see your words, but the whole world, the whole spiritual world can. And so God sees these words, the purity of this person, and what God does is literally sends like basically a light, a light, a light, a light protection shield around the words. And so from there, the souls those souls that are stuck, right? Because it says that the souls came to this field because the voice from the heavens told them that if they come to this place, there's going to be a righteous person there, and that righteous person is going to pray. And when he prays, you're going to be able to ascend to the heavens with his soul, with his prayers, right? The souls will be able to ascend to the heavens with the prayers of this righteous person, right? But the thing is, there's always a negative side, right? Anytime there's something positive, anytime there's something great, there's the evil side there that's trying to block the prayers. Even if you know in Rosh Hashanah, right? When Rosh Hashanah, they blow the shofar over and over again when we're praying the Musaf prayer because they said we want to confuse the Satan, right? So there's always a negative side trying to get in the way of our prayers. But a prayer of a person who's lacking, a person who's missing something, a person who doesn't have, right? That person, that prayer has a protection shield. And that protection shield is protected from the negative side that wants to interrupt it. Why? Because the prayers of a righteous person and the prayers of a person who's lacking, a person who's suffering in life, those prayers mean so much to God. So he protects those prayers. And so the souls that are stuck, right? The souls that when a person dies and they don't live righteously, their soul is not able to get into the heavens. They're stuck. So they have to literally, they walk around, they roam the world. So there's souls around us all the time, right? And these souls around us all the time are waiting for opportunities to connect to people and ascend with their prayers above. And he says the same principle exists like in the next world. When a person dies and their soul goes to the heavens, right? Before their soul goes to Shemaim, it goes to Gehinnom, right? The place where the dark place where the souls are at, right? And when it passes by those souls, if you could imagine it, if you could imagine, oh, hold on, somebody jumped in. Hold on. Okay. Hold on one second. Okay. All right. So so the souls that are going up to heaven, they have to pass through Gehinnom. Gehinnom is like the place like what the Christians would call hell, right? Like it's a place for souls who really didn't do the best job. They 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 make it into this place of Gehinnom, and Gehinnom is a place where they get to transform themselves, right? And eventually they transform themselves and they get to the heavens. But there's people who didn't even make it in that place, and those are the souls that we're talking about, right? So there's millions and millions of souls that are trapped, billions of souls that are trapped in this world that are not able to get to the heavens, that are not able to get to the heavens. And those souls that cannot make it to the heavens, the souls that are not able to make it to the heavens, they are stuck. And so they wait for a righteous person or a person who's in a lot of pain, a person who's struggling. They wait for that person to to reveal themselves. And by doing that, because the prayers of the poor and righteous are so dear to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator, that those souls are able to like attach themselves in a way and clothe themselves into the words of the person who's praying, and are able to go up to the heavens and make it into that holy place, right? And so that is the idea of what's going on. Now, this is another point. So there's another story about the Ari, and we'll almost be done with this, and we'll jump into the parsha. Okay. So it's like this. So one day, if you guys come, I don't know if you guys been to Israel or not, but in the north of Israel is a place called Sfat, right? And Sfat is a place where they have a huge cemetery there, huge cemetery, and all so many. Like you got to be the righteous of the righteous to be buried there. Like the Ari is buried there. Rabbi Yosef Kral is buried there. There's so many humongous people that are buried. Rav Berg, who started the Kabbalah Center, all these different people are buried there, right? And so they tell a story that, and I'll read it inside so you can see. So Rabbi Gedalia, right? He tells a story that he told his students that every Friday they would go to the great city of they would go out to the city to greet Shabbat. So the Arizal would go into the front of their town, and they would go to the front of town and they would do Kabbalat Shabbat, and they would bring in the Shabbat there. And he says, and one time, the Arizal told them a story that on numerous occasions, while standing on the mountaintop that overlooked the whole city, he could observe the entire cemetery, right? It's a huge cemetery if you ever see it. And he says, and it says, hold on. Let me put it on mute. Hold on. Okay, we're cool. All right. So the Arizal goes on this mountaintop, and he's able to see the entire city of Sfat, right, from this angle. And he says, from this vantage point, he observed a host of angels. This is on Shabbat. Okay, this is on Shabbat. From this place, he was able to observe a host of souls ascending from their graves towards the Garden of Eden. So on Shabbat, the souls that are in the gravesite, specifically the righteous souls that are in gravesites, they go up to the heavens. And he says, so he was seeing all these souls going up into the heavens. And then at the same time, he also noticed thousands of souls descending towards them. And they were the souls that were coming down from the heavens. And he said that these are the souls that come, that these are the souls that when people say on Shabbat you receive an extra soul. I don't know if you've ever heard that. On Shabbat you receive an extra soul. These are the extra souls that come down and they greet the righteous, right? So so if you guys are, so hold on, let me fix this. Hold on a second. Hold on. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, fine, whatever. All right, fine. It stopped again. So, all right. So, okay. So this is the thing. So imagine all these souls going up in the air and all these souls coming down, right? And happens on every Shabbat and every Yom Tov and every Rosh Chodesh, right? So this is the point. So what do we learn from this whole dynamic that we're talking about right now? That number one, that there's billions of souls around us all the time. Okay. And these souls are souls that were not able to get into the heavens because they were not good friends. They did not help people. They never repented for their sins, and they never helped anybody else, right? They were pretty much living a very selfish state. So when their life was over after 120, their souls wanted to get into the heavens, but they couldn't. So from that place, the souls were stuck and they had to wander around the world. And so these souls were wandering around, some for thousands of years, some for hundreds of years, some for 1 year, some for 10 months. Every soul has a different story. And so the that souls that come, the souls that are the souls that exist, the souls that are around are basically stuck. So what happens is that God creates scenarios for righteous people and for people to go through difficulty. And by going through these difficulty, those souls that were being elevated, those souls that need to get into the heavens can jump and connect to those prayers and elevate. So this is the basis of that idea. So why is this important? It's important. It's important because in this week's parsha, it starts like this, right? So we got to see it inside to really get a kick. So this is Parsha Todot, and this is the parsha after Chai Sarah, right? This is the parsha after Yitzhak and Rebecca meet each other, right? And this is a whole new thing. But we have to look at everything that's happened that made Abraham have to cry out for God, things that made Sarah have to cry out for God, things that made Isaac cry out for God, and things that made Rebecca in this whole dynamic cry out for God. These are the things. Why did Hashem do that? You got to keep in mind, these were the only righteous people on planet Earth, right? The descendants of Abraham. These were the only people. There's billions of people on planet Earth, right? Maybe less, more than, I don't know. But it was a lot of people, right? All over planet Earth. And the only people who understood God were the people that were descendants of Abraham. So if we understand, so why would Hashem put them through difficulties? Why wouldn't he just make it easy? They're the righteous ones. They should be the ones that live in the best life and have no struggles. It should be the easiest thing. So what's going on? What's going on is that God utilizes the righteous for so many things, right? And so from that space, let's enter this discussion on this week's parsha. So it says, Ela Torah Yitzhak ben Abraham Tolid Ed Yitzhak. So this is the famous question. So it says the story of Yitzhak, the son of Abraham. Abraham begets Isaac. So let's look at this verse closely, right? Let's really look at it closely and then start thinking like rabbis, right? We're all Rebbitzins, right? All you guys gonna be future Rebbitzins one day. You're gonna have you're gonna marry a rabbi. You're gonna have holy children, the whole thing. So let's just read it in that way. So it says this is the story of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Okay, it says that, right? Then the next sentence says, Abraham Holid et Yitzhak, right? Holid, right? Holid. So it says, and Isaac and Abraham beget Isaac. Why does the Torah have to tell us that twice? We already just read it. This is the story of Isaac, son of Abraham. Why does it have to say Abraham beget Isaac? What's going on, right? So the sages teach the reason why the Torah has to emphasize that, because if we remember what happened before, right? Sarah and Isaac go into an area. They go into an area, and Sarah and Abraham. Sorry about that. Sarah and Abraham. Sarah is kidnapped, right? She's kidnapped by Abimelech, right? Same guy, Abimelech. She's kidnapped, right? And so she's released. Abraham comes again. She's released. Same exact story that happened with Peros. Sarah's always getting, kidnapped. What's going on with this, right? We'll talk about that. We talked about it a little bit in our first conversation, but we'll get there on this. So Sarah's kidnapped, right? Again, right? And then so she's released. Abraham comes, rescues, and makes peace with Abimelech. And then shortly after that, she becomes pregnant. So people started to make rumors about Abraham and Sarah and saying, like, no, that's not really Abraham's kid. That's not really Abraham's kid. Whose kid is it? Is actually it's Abimelech's kid. There's no way Abraham and this elderly woman, these two elderly people can do it, right? There's no way. So the Torah has to emphasize that this is Abraham's son, and that it's not just the story of Isaac and Abraham's son, but it's also the fact that Abraham is a miracle. But the whole world doubted it, right? The famous Rashi, right? What does Rashi say? So I'm going to read it inside like this. He said, just because the scriptures wrote Isaac, son of Abraham, it felt compelled to say Abraham beget Isaac, because the cynics of that time said Sarah became with a child of Abimelech. See how many years she lived without Abraham with a child. How did the Holy One, blessed be he, do this? So he said, what did he do? He said he created. So they said, and this is the Midrashim. It says that because of this doubt that humanity had, the people of that time had, on the fact that Isaac, right, was really Abraham's son, right, and they had all these years that they never had a kid, and then all of a sudden she gets kidnapped by Abimelech, and then she's released, and then she gets pregnant. It can't be Abraham, right? If it was Abraham, why did they have kids, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 years before? Why now? So it must be something wrong, right? And so this is the challenge of what they're dealing with. And so they said that God, the creator of the universe, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, he made it in a way that Isaac looked exactly like Abraham, right? That Isaac looked exactly like Abraham, right? And the reason why, is that the people would be able to see, what? No, he looks exactly like Abraham. What are you talking about? That's obviously his kid. But there's two very big lessons out of this first pasuk. One lesson is the fact that Isaac, right? That Isaac came into a world that no one believed who he really was. Like, he came in a world full of doubt. They didn't even believe that he was really even Abraham's son, right? And some people say that was his protection, right? In life, people could doubt us, but doubt is our greatest friend, right? I don't know if you guys know who Oprah Winfrey is, but Oprah Winfrey is a very big TV personality here in the United States. She's an African American woman. She's a billionaire, very famous. And so she tells a story, and she says people doubting her was her greatest gift. He said, because when she negotiated her first television contract that made her rich, that if people knew how great she was going to become, they would have never gave her that deal, right? They would have been vultures. They would have said, no, 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 we're going to take 80%, you get 20%. But because they said, okay, yeah, whatever, who cares? We don't know what you're going to do, because she was able to negotiate such a great deal, because everyone doubted her, because they didn't think this young black girl could ever be this huge TV personality. They just gave her a deal that she wanted. They said, okay, fine, take it. And because of that, she became a billionaire. So in life, we learn in this moment that people doubting you to be your greatest asset into your success. People doubting you can allow you to make moves in the world that people not allow you to do, because they don't take you serious. They say, oh, well, you're not really the you're not really the real, hold on one second. You're not really the real people, right? 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 So this is the thing by Isaac, right? But we learn it, sorry about that, guys. But we learn it through this parsha, right? And so it keeps going. So that's one lesson. That's one lesson. One lesson is one of the greatest gifts is to be doubted, for people to not see how great you are. Because so much of our life, we spend our life wanting everyone to see how smart we are, how much we can contribute, how good of a heart that we have, how sincere we are. All these things, we want to convince the world of how good of a person that we are all the time, right? And so we learn through Isaac's birth, and through the fact that people didn't even know that Isaac was really Abraham's son, and I'm repeating it because of the people in the room, that the people doubting you is a gift. Don't look at it as a bad thing. And not only that, people doubting you and being Jewish is directly connected, right? Because you got to think about it. When the Midrashim say, when Sarah Menu became pregnant, that it was a huge concept. Imagine an elderly woman. I'm sure you guys imagine a woman in her 90s in your community getting pregnant, right? And they said, because it was such a huge miracle, it was such a huge concept, that the women all around the world who heard the story of this elderly woman who became pregnant, it literally changed their brains. It changed the way they saw life. And they were able to conceive and get pregnant. It's like, I don't know if you ever watched the Olympics, and there's a world record, right? World record is listed for 15 years. No one's broke it. And as soon as someone breaks that record, the next year someone else breaks it, the next year someone else breaks it, or 2 years later someone breaks it. And then you look back 30 years ago, 40 years ago in the Olympics, you'd be like, wait, people are that slow? They're that slow? No, no, no. It's that once somebody does something new, once someone does something great, it changes the perception, because the truth is there's nothing that we can accomplish as human beings, right? They said the human brain use what? Only 3 to 5% of our brain. We're not even using 95% of our brain, our potential intelligence, right? So that means that there's things that we can do as human beings that we haven't even tapped into. So when people do new things and they innovate and they create new things, this isn't just, wow, look what happened over there. No, it's for you to look at yourself. No, it's never too late to achieve anything. And whatever the world tells you, don't believe them. Don't believe them, because there's no limit to what we can achieve. We're only using less than 5% of our brain. There's 95% of our brain here. So it doesn't matter what we say. So those are big ideas in this first parsha, right? Is one, to understand that when people are doubting us, we should never have a problem with that. Yitzhak was doubted from the beginning, and that was a form of protection, right? Like I told you the story about Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey says, big TV personality in America, African-American woman. She says, hey, you know what? If people believed in me, I wouldn't have got the deal that made me into a billionaire. It's because they doubted me. And so now we're learning another principle in this first verse about Sarah getting pregnant and Sarah having a child as an elderly woman in her 90s, right? That idea. So what's the significance of that idea? That means that we don't even know what we're capable of. And when we read the Torah is not a fantasy book. It's not a, God forbid, it's not even a history book. It's a book showing us aspects of human potential, not just in a standpoint of someone having birth, but also love, compassion, sensitivity, patience, right? We see all this in the Torah. Okay, so let's keep going. So it says, "Vayihi Yitzhak ben Arba'im Shana Be'chachto." So it says, and Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rivka as a wife. Who's Rivka? She was the daughter of Beit Salal, right? And the sister of Lavan. And we're going to hear about Lavan much later on in the Torah. So this is him. Abraham Yitzhak, he was an older guy, and his wife was young. You know, it happens that way. I don't know. It's the way God did it in the Torah. So this is what happened. And so what happened? So he marries this young girl, right? And it says Ve'i atar Yitzhak le Adonai le nochach ishto ki achara ho ve'i atar lo Adonai ve'tahar ve'rivka ishto. And he says, so Yitzhak pleaded on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and so he pleaded with her. So this is back to what we were talking about before. Why would it be that the most righteous people, somebody you guys there? Okay, fine. So anyways, so Yitzhak has this issue with his wife getting pregnant, right? He has an issue with his wife getting pregnant, right? And so we have to understand, why is that happening? What is the Torah saying? Like, why is it important for us to know that? Why is it even important? Even if it happened, it happened, but the fact that it happened, why do we need to know that? Right? Hold on a second. Hold on. I gotta put this on. Hold on.
As for Chibike, I think I'm a Chibike slapping. I like in the.
Hold on a second. All right, thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're back to it. So anyway, so this is the point. So let's go back to it. So the question is again, why? Wait, let me get back to the screen. Sorry. Hold on 1 second. Okay, we've got to get the screen back up. 1 second. 1 second. Hold on. Screen, boom. There we go. All right, cool. Okay, so we're back in. Okay, so it's like this. So the question is, why does Isaac have to struggle with having a baby? Why couldn't it be? And even if they struggle, why does the Torah have to tell us that? What does it do for us? Okay, she got pregnant, right? The big story is Asaph and Yaakov, right? This is the beginning of the Jewish people. It's happening right now. This is the beginning of the Jewish people, right? And so we have to understand what's going on, like what's happening. And not only that, let's look at the verse very closely, right? So it says Ve'atar Yitzak Le'Adonai Le'Chochach Ishto Ki Achara. So he's saying like this. He's saying that Isaac pleaded on behalf of his wife because she was barren. And God responded to his plea, and Rebekah conceived. Now, this is a very big thing. So the question is, why does the Torah have to tell you that Isaac's prayers were answered and it wasn't Rebekah's? Why does it tell us that? A couple wants to have a baby. They both pray. They go to holy places. They do this. They give charity. They'll host people for Shabbat. Why does it have to tell us that Isaac's prayers were answered and it wasn't Rebekah's? So the sages go into it because they're really trying to understand this, right? Because Rebekah, you have to think about it. Rebekah grew up in Lavan's house. Lavan, according to the Torah, was a Rasha, right? She lived in a house of Avodah Zarah. She lived amongst people that lived in not a pure way, right? And so from that standpoint, right, the Torah says that she literally left the house of darkness and entered and came into the house of Abraham to marry Yitzhak. So like what's going on? How do we understand that? Right? So the Or Chaim brings down and he says like this. He says that there's two types of people in spirituality. There's people who leave darkness and go into the light, and then there's people who are born into the light. Now the challenge is that a person who leaves darkness and comes to the light, they figured it out, right? They figured it out. They're like, hey, you know what? This isn't a good place. This isn't healthy for me. I need to get out of here. I need to get to a better place. I need to get in a better environment. I need to get in a healthy environment. I need to get away from all the trauma, all this stuff. I need to get out of here, right? And this is the classic, what they call a Bat Tshuva, right? A person who returns to the Torah. But then there's another type of person, and that person is born in the holiness. Now, the thing is, you would think that the person who's born in the holiness has an easier time, right? That person has an easier time. Why? Because the easier time is connected. The easier time is connected to the easier time is connected to the fact that you grow up in a reality where everything's given to you. And think about it. Isaac, he grew up in Abraham's house, right? They had angels visiting the house. He had a huge movement, kings, dignitaries. His dad's winning wars, defeating everybody. He just grew up with the holy. His mom is they're bringing all types of holiness down into this world. They're teaching thousands of people. He grew up in it. But the challenge is when you grow up in it, it's harder to find yourself. It's harder to find yourself. You think it's the person who is in darkness. No, the person in darkness can say, you know what? This is dark. I'm out of here. Bye. I'm out. Bye. I'm out. But no, but the person who grows up in this darkness, the person who grows up in this darkness, is easy for them to define themselves by the light. But when you're in the light, you got to find your own light. And that's what Isaac was able to do. Isaac didn't do exactly what Abraham did. He didn't go out and create a big caravan. He didn't go out and do these things. No, he didn't travel the world. He stayed in Eretz Israel. So he had a different madriga. He had a different understanding, right? And so because of that, his prayers were at a higher level. So what do we learn from this idea? We learn that the highest connection is not to just be a follower of everybody who's successful, but to rather learn from those people and to create our own success, to find our own place in the world, to leave our own mark, to express our own uniqueness, right? And that's what it is. And the thing is, this is the power of Rivka, right? As a Jewish mother, as a Jewish wife, is that she was able to create an environment where her husband was able to find his uniqueness, that he was able to go out and express who he was. And a lot of that had to do with him taking care of her. Because, and this is a crazy thing, okay? This is a crazy thing. But it says that Rivka did not have a womb, right? A woman needs a womb in order to have a child. And so they said Isaac prayed for her day and night for 13 years. Some say longer, but 13 years he prayed for her, right? And so he prayed for her for those years. And by his prayers, he created a womb inside of his wife. He created the womb. So you look at it and you say, oh, no, no, no. Wow, look how amazing Isaac is. Look how amazing Isaac is. His wife, she was suffering. She didn't have a womb. They needed to have a child. And he prayed for her and created a womb. No, that's not how the way to look at it. The way to look at it is that a woman being herself, being who she is, her strengths and her weaknesses. This is exactly what her husband needs in order for him to grow. The woman is perfect. Okay, this woman has this woman is more this woman has this issue. Maybe she likes to argue, God forbid. Or this person may be a little bit lazy, or this person may have an illness, God forbid, or a person can have children, God forbid. And so you look at these things, you're like, oh my God, why can't things just be perfect? But no, but it's out of the imperfection that makes us have to love each other, to have compassion for each other, to have empathy for each other. This is what makes a man grow. And so a woman should feel confident that a Jewish woman is already Kodesh. She's already holy, right? Even if she doesn't make all the best decisions and she doesn't do everything right, right? She's already Kodesh. And so her husband has to know that his wife is already holy, and whatever comes along with her is a blessing, is a bracha, right? So let's keep going. So she gets pregnant. And so it says, Veyit rotzitu habanim beikarav ba ta'amor. Im ken lema ze anoki ve'telet sorry. The words are very small on my screen, and I don't see all the vowels, so I got to really squint my eyes. So it says, so he's saying like this. So Rivka's pregnant, and she's walking around, and she's struggling in her womb, and she says, "If so, why is this going on?" Right? So she's walking around. So imagine you're a woman and you're pregnant. It's the first time you're pregnant. Your mother-in-law she died. Sarah Mainu's died, so you have no one really to talk to. You're disconnected from your family because you left them because they're in a place of darkness. So now you're in this new reality, and you're walking around, and you're just all this craziness is going in your stomach. And you're trying to understand, like, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? Is this normal for pregnancy? She doesn't have anyone to talk to. So what does she do? She talks to God. She talks to God, and it says, "Vayomer Adonai la shene goyim bed vitenech," and it says, "Ushene leumina mimi mi'iyayik." So he says like this, and he says, and he answered her. And he's answered her by saying this: there's two nations in your womb. Two separate people will issue from your body. And one people shall be mightier than the others. And the others and the older shall serve the younger. So this is going on. Now, you understand what's happening right now. Because right now we could look at it on a macro level and say, or micro level and say, hey, you know what? This lady, she's pregnant. She has this thing going on inside of her, and she doesn't understand. And God explained to her that she's having twins. And not only is she having twins, these two twins are going to be the basis of two nations, two humongous nations, not kids. There's one thing for someone to say you're going to have kids. No, he's saying here that you're going to have two great nations inside of you. Right? And so these two great nations one will be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. This has happened. So this is a very important point to remember, because now we're going to understand from here why Rivka later on gives Jacob, Yaakov, the instructions to go and in a way deceive her husband, right, for the birthright, because she was just following the prophecy that she heard. She wasn't telling Yitzhak, or she wasn't telling Yaakov to do something wrong, but rather she was doing what God told her. God told her. It seems like, well, Rivka, why are you telling your husband, your kid, to go and put on the Aesop's code and go to Yitzhak? No, this is going on right now. And so it's important also to pause right here too. Why? Because what's going on here is very important. So far in the Torah, we learn about different children. We learn about Ishmael first. Ishmael is the progenitor of Ishmael is the progenitor of the Muslim world, right? So all the Muslims in the world stem from Ishmael. The Christian world, right? It comes from Adam, right? It comes from Adam. It comes from Esau. That's where it comes from. The whole Christian world. We're trying between the Muslims and the Christian. I mean, was it like 4 billion people connected, or 5 billion? I don't even know how many people. It's like 9 billion people. But a vast part of all of planet Earth are descendants of what we're reading right now. So the Torah has to explain this to us, right? Because we need to understand, how do we get to this place? How do we get to the place where the Christians are trying to take over the Jews, and the Jews are fighting the Muslims, and the Christians are fighting the Muslims? Where is all this coming from? It's starting now. It's starting now. Ishmael is already started to attack Isaac before he was ever married, right? He got kicked out of the house. Him and his mother, right? Sarah was very harsh on him. And now we're hearing about the creation of the Christian world. So, like, for example, even if you look at Nigeria, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys. In the north of Nigeria, you have the Hausa, right? Which is mostly like Muslims. And then you have in the north, was it the north south? Is it the north south? You have the Yoruba, which is mostly Christian. And then you have in the southeast, you have Igbo, which, a lot of the Christian, but the root of them are Israelites, right? They got converted 19th century. We know the story. But the point is the same. You can see that same layout in Nigeria, and you can see that there's conflict, right? So this story is showing the makeup of how people interact with each other. So it says like this. It says, when it was time for her to give birth, when the time of birth was given, she had twins in her womb. Veyat said, Harishon. So he says, and the first one emerged red and hairy, and he in a mantle over, and so he named him Esau, right? So that was his name, Esau. Achre ken Yesa Achiva Beyido, and he says, and his brother emerged holding on to the heel of Esau, and so they gave him the name Yaakov. And Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. So this is happening. Now, let's get even deeper. Now, when we read this, let's not just read it. Let's understand that Hashem is showing us how the world is designed. It's not just we're reading, this story that happened thousands of years. No, this is right now. So what does it say? It says, Ve'agid lu maha ni arima ve'yahi esav esha yadada sa'id Isha Shade. So it says, Yaakov Isha Tam Yoshev. And it says, and the boys grew up. Okay, they grew up. Esau became a skilled hunter. So Esau is about war. It's about war and conquest. United States, the country that I was born in. God bless America. This country is a byproduct of Esau. America loves war, whether it was through war in the country with the American Indians and the Spanish Americans, all the way now we're put it this way: if you took all the airplanes in the world, all the fighter jets in the world, right, all the fighter jets in the world from all the nations in the world, and you put them all together, the United States has more fighter jets than they do. That's how much America loves war, right? And so this was the natural nature of Esau. This is the nation. This is Rome. Eventually, how Rome loved wars. You've seen all the movies, the gladiators, all this stuff. And then now it speaks about, and it says, a man of the outdoors. But Jacob was a mild man. He was low key. He was raising livestock. So he was dealing with like animals, chill. He was in the house. He was in the tent. He was studying. And so this is an interesting point right here. So the next verse says, Ve'ahev Yitzhak ed Esav ki Said, and it says Beifiv. And then so he says, and Yitzhak favored Esav because he had a taste for the game. But Rebecca favored Yaakov. So it's an interesting thing. What does this mean? Like they're both parents of these kids. And so what is the Torah trying to say when it says he favored? Right? He says he favored. Ve'ahav, right? What does that mean? Ve'ahav, right? It's like he loved ahava, right? You can see it in there. And so it says, what does this mean? So basically, in a way, you think about it. Rivka came from Lavan's house. So she was closer to the physical world in a lot of ways, right? The Badazar, the whole thing. Yitzhak grew up in Abraham's house, which is like the spiritual world, right? So Rivka and Yitzhak complemented each other, right? Because Isaac was spiritual, and Rivka was spiritual too, but she was more in the physical component of spirituality. So they have these children. One of the sons is very spiritual, Jacob, and the other son is very physical. So it's natural that Yitzhak would favor Esau because there's a connection there. Esau is more physical. So he was able to pour his light into Esau, right? He was able to pour that energy. And Rebecca favored Jacob because Jacob had this love and this energy that Rebecca was able to receive. Esau was kind of like her in certain ways, like more physical and these types of things, right? So that's what's being said there. And there's different opinions on it. And so he says, once Esau was cooking, right? And we're gonna finish off on this point because this is the big point. This is really the biggest point. So once Esau was cooking a stew, Esau came home famished, right? Totally hungry. And Esau says, "Va'omer Esau el Yaakov hala e teni na min ha'adam zeki." And so he says, and Esau said to Jacob, give me some of that red stuff, so I could gulp it down. I am famished. He says, which is why he is named Edom, right? Which is a whole conversation. What does it mean by Edom? We just don't have that much time to go into it. So it says, Vayomer Yaakov. And so he says, and Yaakov says to him, on this day, he says, sell me your birthright. Give me your birthright. And so this is a very big point because through here, we can understand a huge point. What is the relationship between Esav and Yaakov? What is the issue between the Christian nations and the Jewish nation? Because the Christians have been persecuting Jews forever. So what's going on? Right here, you're going to learn when you see Christians want to oppress Jews, no matter where they're at in the world, this is why. Because Esau gave away his birthright. So we got to understand, what does that mean? He gave away his birthright. So Esau and Yaakov, as we learned before, are both nations, right? They're both humongous nations. So what we're learning is that if they're both nations, the nations came from them. So the nation of Israel came from Yaakov. The nation of Edom, right, which we know as Christianity, came from Esau. So what is the thing? What's going on? What's going on is the idea that Esau, when he gave away his birthright, which you're reading right now, you got to keep in mind, what did he actually give away? He gave away all the wealth, right? We got to look into the future. All the wealth that Bnei Israel received when they left Egypt, all that wealth, Jacob's descendants got all that wealth. No one else got it, just Jacob. You got to think about it. When Joseph went into Egypt and the famine happened, all the money in the entire world came into Egypt. It was a superpower of superpower, like 3 Americas and 3 Chinas all combined, right? Russia, everyone combined, all the wealth of those nations all into one. This Saudi Arabia all combined. This is what happened in Egypt. And so Abraham was given a promise, right? Before, let's go back a little further. Abraham was given a promise that your descendants would be slaves and then they would leave with great wealth, right? So that's what we saw, right? That's what we understood. And so from that place, we were able to understand that the wealth that came into Egypt was part of the prophecy that came to Abraham. So when Moses came, he had to force the people to take the wealth, right? They went into all the houses. They knew where all the wealth was in the 3 days of darkness. And when they leave for the Exodus, they went inside the houses and they took all the wealth and they left Egypt. So that was the wealth of the entire world. So Asaph, if he wouldn't have gave away his birthright, his descendants would have received that wealth. Also, he gave away Eretz Israel, the land of Eretz Israel. I'm in Jerusalem right now. This land would not be exclusively Yaakov. It would also be Esav. They would have to divide the land and the spoils and everything. So the holiness of the land of Eretz Israel, he gave it away with the birthright. What else? He gave away his burial place in Merak Mepelach. This is a place in Hebron, which is in the southern part of Israel. I love it. It's one of my most favorite places here. I go there all the time. I haven't been in a while, but it's like it's my happy place. I just go there and I just get happy when I'm there. It's an unbelievable energy there. And it's so powerful and it's so beautiful. And I always usually go in the afternoon so I get to see the sunset. It's like unbelievable. It's like your heart just melts like uh like um like butter on toast, it just melts when you see the sunset. So it's so beautiful. But that's the gravesite where Abraham's buried, Sarah's buried, Jacob, and Leah, Isaac, Rebecca. They're all buried there, right? And so he gave that away with his birthright. He said, I don't care about my birthright. You can take it. And then most importantly, he gave up the receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. So when you read that he gave away his birthright for lentil soup, don't take it just as like, oh, well, he just gave away his birthright. What does that mean? No, he gave away. Could you imagine what that's worth today? What's that's worth today? So the question is why, right? And we're getting close to finishing. Why did he do that? Why did Aesop do that? Why would he give away so much greatness, so much power, so much energy? Why would he give it away? So the story goes like this. When Adam was in the Garden of Eden, the angels made him a special coat. And the special coat gave him superpowers. Let him to be invisible, allowed him to speak in different languages. He could even communicate with the animals. He could do all these really miraculous things that, humans can't do, right? And so he got this coat, and somehow this coat got passed down for generations, and he got into Nimrod. I don't know if you remember Nimrod, but Nimrod was a big guy during times of Abraham that wanted to kill Abraham, the whole thing. Actually, Eliezer, the guy who finds Rebecca, is his father, right? And so Nimrod gets this coat, and that's how he became a huge ruler. Asaph, in a tricky way, found a way, and he kills Nimrod, and he takes the coat. So now Asaph has all the power in the world. He could do anything. He could hunt. He could kill. He could take over any kingdom. He could be invisible. There's nothing that could stop him. He could walk right into a kingdom and kill all the top generals and appear and say, I'm now the ruler. And nobody could stop him. So he had power all over the world. And so here, because he had power over the world, when Jacob offers him, he says, I want your birthright. He knew Esau didn't care about the birthright anymore. He was completely connected to the world of physicality. He was connected to the world of conquering, the war of being rich, of doing whatever you want. And so because of that power, he said, what do I need my birthright for? You can have it. I don't care. I got the whole world. What do I need it for? And sometimes, unfortunately, we see a lot of our Jewish brothers and sisters. They get so caught up in the physical world. They get so caught up in the materialism that they forget their inheritance. They forget the birthright. They forget the mission that goes back to Abraham. And that mission is to bring light to the entire world, is to elevate the entire humanity. That is the mission of our people. That is the mission of who we are. When we keep Shabbat, it's not just for us. It's light to the whole world. When the Jews keep Shabbat, it's to the whole world. When we keep kosher, it's light to the whole world. When you see a marriage happen in our community, it's light to the whole world. All these things are light. But if we give those things away and say, oh, well, what do I need Judaism for? I'm a multimillionaire. I'm a billionaire. What do I need it for? Who cares? Who cares? I'm on top of the world. I don't need any of this. You could keep the heritage. You could keep it. And that's why the culture of the Igbo people is so important, right? The culture is so important because if we lose sight of the culture of Amunana and all these different beautiful, amazing things that have allowed the people, the Israelites today, that exist today, that history, if we let that go away, who are we? Right? I'm American, but my family descendants are Igbo, right? We were brought to America in slave ships, right? That's what happened, right? And so guys like me are like, wait, I mean, this is where I come from, right? Stop. I'm not American. I'm Igbo. We're Israelites. We go all the way back to Mount Sinai, all the way to Israel, all the way to the base of Mikdash. That's who we are. There's no converts. That's who we are. And people say, oh, mainstream Judaism. Okay, fine, whatever. But it doesn't change the truth of who we are. And so we can't allow people on the outside to come in with ideas to tell us that we need to be different than who we are. We need to change our customs. We need to change our culture to be like them. No, because we are connected to the beginning of the whole conversation, right? And we have to know that. And we have to know that if we go away from that, we're going in a place of Esav. We're going in a place of giving away our birthright. We're going away, giving away who we are to fit in to other people and say, oh, well, we don't need our culture anymore. We don't need our heritage anymore. We're over here. We're mainstream. We're Sephardic. We're Ashkenaz. No, you got you have it. We have it. And we have to own that. And so anyway, so with that being said, this Parsha and everything that goes forward, when we learn about Asa, we're learning about a people that lost their way. And so now when we want to understand the Christian world, what does the Christian world say? Oh, well, the base of Mikdash fell. The base of Mikdash fell. And so now the covenant is no longer with the Jews, it's with us. Right? That's what they say. They just make it up. They just made it up. Why do they make it up? Because they lost their birthright. They're still trying to get it back. They're still trying to get it back. So they go around convincing the world and creating false gods and false stories and fake books and fake all these different things they created. Why? Because they're still trying to get that birthright back. They're trying to convince the world that God's rule is not true, but their rule is. They even created a new Torah. They call it a New Testament, right? Or the good news, whatever they want to call it. But they created new books to be able to justify their thing. And then not only that, they use our books to justify it. They go to the Torah and they say, oh, well, look at this verse. Look at, Daniel this, and look at Isaiah 53, and look at this, and look at these verses. See, they're talking about our God. What are you talking about? We already received, we had the Masurah. You're coming from Edom. They'll say, well, the original Christians were in Jerusalem. Who cares? That has nothing to do with this. They never called themselves Christians. You guys created that in Europe. You guys created the story. Okay, fine, you can say Ethiopia, whatever. But the bottom line is it has nothing to do with the traditions of Abraham. These are things that were created later. Asaph was supposed to be a Jew. He was supposed to live as a Jew. He went off and went and created his descendants created a whole nother religion and created false gods and deities. So the key thing is knowing who we are, knowing who you are and not compromising who you are for anybody, knowing that the fact that you are still alive and your ancestry is still intact. Right? Yes, you're learning new things, rabbinical Judaism. Okay, fine, I get it. But the bottom line is that Amunana and all these other traditions go all the way back to Abraham, before even Mount Sinai. So you have to know that, you have to preserve that. Anyways, I want to just thank the community, the Nigerian youth, the Nigerian youth organization, and everybody involved for just doing this year, and God willing, we'll continue to do it every week, and we'll just keep learning. You know what I mean? And we'll just keep pushing it, and just keep growing in this conversation, because this isn't just about the idea of the parsha. right? It's also about the idea of being able to see yourself inside of the parsha, right? And being able to see that, what we're doing, what's going on is intrinsically important to everything that we're trying to accomplish and everything that we are. So is there any questions, any ideas, any responses? Okay. Doesn't sound like it. Everyone's very modest. Okay, I got that. Okay, so let's just do it again next week. We just keep going and we just keep doing it every week. We get some chizuk, we get some strength for the week. We keep pushing it and just have success. And if there's any questions, you can add me on social media. You could ask me any questions, whatever on the parsha. If you need a source, you need me to send you anything, I could do that. But it's been amazing. And thank you again for this opportunity to share Torah with you guys. And God willing, I'll see you guys next week. Shova Tov, and have a just exhilarating time reading the rest of this part.